keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
He's going to finish second. I think Jaden Daniels is going to win that. So, I think it's a sign of the fact that the team is turning the corner, getting over the hump, whatever cliche you want to use when you've got somebody on both sides of the ball up for an award. You've got your coach up for award. Okay, that's some corner pieces here on the rebuild that you can certainly look at and say, okay, that those pieces are in place. Now let's fill in the gap. So all very deserving. I think Surtain's going to win, which I think is a little bit because it's a down year.
Wow, really?
I know. We can get into it.
Okay, all right. Well, let's do that then. We can go category by category. Let's start with the Defensive Player of the Year nominations. You see them right there. You've got Zach Brown, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Patrick Surtain, and T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt, I think, was the front runner for a good portion of the year, even though statistically it hasn't been as good as years where he didn't win it in the last couple of years. But it almost kind of, that's sometimes how it works with these awards, where like sometimes a guy gets it a year or two late because you just ran up against somebody that was just having an insane year despite how good you were. But I agree with you. I think Patrick Surtain was the overwhelming, kind of betting favorite by the end of the year. I think he got down as low as like minus 300 or so to win the award. I don't see anybody on that list that I can definitively say has a bigger impact or a more mastery at their position than Patrick Surtain in this moment right now.
Well, and this is going to come across like I'm anti-Surtain.
Here we go.
And I'm not. How many interceptions did he have this year? Like 3? Like he didn't. It's not like his statistics were amazing. He's going to win the award because on national TV, everybody saw Jamar Chase have his one bad game when Pat Surtain covered him. It's like, okay, well, if you're Joe Burrow, T. Higgins is still open. Mike Gesicki's still open. Like, why are you going to force the ball? Like, was that really a great game from Pat Surtain, or was it like everybody else is so wide open? Joe Burrow threw for 400 yards in that game. And that was the game that made Pat Surtain go from one of them on the list to the favorite. That was the game. That's when it flip-flopped. And I'm not saying he didn't play well, but he didn't have a pick in that. Oh, I guess did he have a pick in that game or just force a fumble? But it's like,
regardless,
he had the 100-yard pick six against the Raiders early in the year. That was kind of the highlight, big highlight, but like what other big moments were there? Essentially, he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year award because of this kind of mythical, he takes away one guy. I don't really buy it. I don't. But there's nobody with 20 sacks. There's nobody that's like Myles Garrett's on a bad team. He's going to win it because there really isn't anybody who dominated.
I disagree with the overall premise that you start off with. Like, what did you have? A couple interceptions? How many? You really think but you're going to hold you knowing the way that NFL offenses and really offenses in football at all levels will look away from, they won't even throw in the direction of sometimes the defense's best player in the secondary, because you can do that when they're secondary players. You can't really avoid a bull rush from a defensive end and scheme around it. I guess you can go double tackle, you can add extra offensive linemen or whatever. But we saw that with Richard Sherman, with Champ Bailey. We see it with Pat Surtain. Now they've moved Pat Surtain around a lot more, it seems like, this year than maybe we've seen in years past. But I think that judging a cornerback's skill level or impact based primarily on how many interceptions he gets is pretty loose.
I'm not saying primarily. I just think like that is a statistic for that position. I mean, I remember the year Champ Bailey had 10 picks. That was a heck of a year. That was a great season. Like, that is a statistic you use for that position. I just don't buy that teams just don't throw his way. Again, the Bengals game is the game where he went from on the list to being the favorite.
What do you mean you don't buy it? We track these things. They have targets.
It's a pro football.
They have
okay, so in the Bengals game, did Joe Burrow not throw to Jamar Chase because Pat Surtain had him just completely taken away, or because
he did not throw to Jamar Chase? He significantly didn't throw to Jamar Chase on the snaps where Jamar Chase was covered by Patrick Surtain. Yes.
He threw to T. Higgins because he was so wide open. He threw to Mike Gesicki because he was so wide open. Jamar Chase was just the lesser open player. That's the thing. Like, he's going to,
and he doesn't get credit for that. He doesn't get credit for tying up one of the best receivers in the league and making it impossible in that moment for his quarterback to throw to him on time.
He didn't tie him up. Joe Burrow threw for 400 yards in that game and just took like, well, that guy's even more wide open. I'll throw to him. Like, that's what I don't understand about this whole narrative of Pat Surtain, is the game that put him on the top is the game when Joe Burrow threw for 400 yards.
No,
it doesn't make any sense.
That didn't put him over. No,
it's
the voting was already done by then.
Bailey Zappi doesn't have any problem throwing his direction.
The voting was already done by then.
No, it wasn't.
Kind of stuff. Yeah.
No, this isn't the Pro Bowl. They don't vote for this stuff before the season's over. I did Denver Sports Tonight with Will Peterson like the Tuesday after that game, and he said,
maybe it wasn't done, but it was pretty well. It was pretty well.
Favorite.
I mean, we're 15 weeks into the season at that point. It's not like the voting just opened.
I just think it's a false narrative. I do. I think it's a bunch of bunk. I think it's a bunch of bunk.
I worry about you sometimes. I do. I worry that I don't know. I just don't know if you're capable of being happy.
I am capable of being happy.
You sound like I'm listening to Brandon Stokely this morning, and they're having a conversation about Aaron Gordon and his willingness to come off the bench in what started as a way to manage his injury revamping, or whatever. But he's even, recently come out and said that he wants to be used however Michael Malone sees fit and whatever it does. And honestly, it creates some very interesting, because it looks good when you're staggering Jamal, when you got AG coming off the bench and Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup. It looks good. We're not having conversations about surviving the Jokic minutes, not to totally go down the Nuggets wormhole, but I'm listening to this conversation this morning, and Brandon Stokely's like humbugging Aaron Gordon, like Mike and Mike wants to give him, credit. Like, hey, what a great, team player, selfless, putting the group before the individual. And I've said here to you and to a lot of people that Aaron Gordon to me is one of the last hard hat and lunch pail guys in the NBA that's just like, hey, I'm going to show up to work, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. There's no ego.
Doubt.
There's no ego involved
and
there.
In that league, that's a rarity.
Exactly. And so in my mind, I'm like, absolutely, Aaron Gordon deserves credit for that. It's rare in that league. It's rare in professional sports. And it's important for the team's ultimate championship aspirations. And Stokely's like, oh, so we just got to give a guy a pat on the back for doing what he's supposed to do, even if it's not, it's not common that it gets done. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know. Like he does the right thing, which is being selfless. And it's rare to people in his position choose to do that. And we don't want to give him credit. If we don't give him credit for that, what do we give people credit for?
I mean,
and you're kind of sounding like Stoke. Oh God, see, I knew it.
Like, it's like giving people credit for showing up to school. Like, you're supposed to show up to school.
James, if everyone decided to stop showing up for school and education was in shambles, and you had a student who not only showed up to school, but showed up 15 minutes early, helped organize the classroom, and made sure his homework was done and collated and turned in
Just
on time, you'd be like, you know what? That's just what you're supposed to do, Timmy. Shut up.
It is just because society's gone amok, and the NBA society's gone amok, where you got to make up a rule for guys to play.
Somehow,
65
I'm not even
games.
surprised that you agreed with him. I mean, I literally brought it up because I said you sound like him.
Do you think
and yet I was still surprised when you agreed with it.
Do you think Pat Surtain had a great season?
I think he's a great cornerback. Yes.
I think he is too. Do you think he had a great season?
Yeah. You know what? I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you had to hesitate. And you're like,
no, not really. I just because I hesitated because I'm like, where is he? What's he trying to get me to say here?
No.
Am I about to step on a tripwire?
He had one memorable moment. One. And he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. That's weird to me. And he's going to win it for two reasons. One, nobody else had a great year. There wasn't a pass rusher who was flirting with 20 sacks or whatever. Aiden Hutchinson got hurt. He was on the best regular season team. Like, who's the guy for the Eagles or the Chiefs or the Bills who would be on that list? Like, it's just kind of a weird year. That's the number one reason. And number two is there's this pro football focus myth that he takes away the other guy. He didn't take away Jamar Chase. Go watch the all 22 of that.
It's
Jamar
not a myth.
Chase
The
is
players
open.
from Brock Bowers to T. Higgins to you name it, whatever the number one receivers for all these teams are the top offensive threats in the passing game.
They put him on Jerry
They
Jeudy?
all have their worst games against Patrick Surtain
Because
it's just a thing. I don't know. You could say it's a pro football focused narrative, but like at some point you're just becoming a flat earther.
No, I'm
denying
not.
What's the truth.
It's because the other guy's so wide open on the other side that they go there. Joe Burrow did not. The Bengals game is the one that sticks in my craw.
Burrow, just that. That's the only thing that's causing all
Burrow
this.
didn't not throw to Jamar Chase because he was taken away by Pat Surtain. He didn't throw to Jamar Chase because nobody was within 5 yards of T. Higgins. Nobody was within 5 yards of Mike Gesicki. Like, he's not an idiot. You don't go broke taking a profit. And it's like, well, there's all kinds of profits here. Why would I even flirt with risk? Like that, it's a false narrative. It's a myth. But congrats, Pat Surtain. You're going to win the award.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, on that chipper note, let's relook at the Offensive Rookie of the Year finalists that are there. We have Brock Bowers, the tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. Jaden Daniels, the stud quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Malik Neighbors, kind of a shining light in a dark hole that is the New York Giants in terms of the productions he was able to do without a quarterback. Bo Nix and Brian Thomas Jr. I think it's pretty safe to say that Jaden Daniels is going to win this award. We are witnessing. We're one game away from a historic moment where a rookie quarterback would lead his team to the Super Bowl right there in the first year. And we're one game away from finding out whether that's going to happen. And I'm going to be honest with you. And this is because I feel about Jaden Daniels the way you clearly feel about Patrick Surtain, which is that I think that not Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
I feel about Jalen Hurts the way you feel about Patrick Surtain, which is that I just think he's wildly overrated. And I
wouldn't disagree with that.
If I said it, I said it partially in jest, maybe it's a little aggressive to Zach and Phil and some of our guys down the hall yesterday. I said, listen, if the tush push didn't exist, Jaden Daniels would be selling DVDs.
Well, I'll put it this way. Of the four quarterbacks playing this weekend, I would take Bo Nix over Jalen Hurts. I would take the other three over Bo Nix. I would take Bo Nix over Jalen Hurts.
Oh, if you put with what we saw from Bo Nix on this Broncos team, I was actually having this thought driving into work today. If you put Bo Nix on the Philadelphia Eagles roster with that offensive line with Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Bo Nix is winning Rookie of the Year in a landslide, and Bo Nix probably would become the first rookie quarterback to take his team to a Super Bowl.
And they would still be playing this weekend. They would be in this game.
Yeah. No, it would be, and like it's the amount of talent that they have on that roster is unbelievable. And I'm praying that the presumptive who I think will win Rookie of the Year, Jaden Daniels, prevents us from having to watch Jalen Hurts throw for 112 yards in a Super Bowl and no touchdowns.
I think Jaden Daniels is going to win the award. Brock Bowers and Bo Nix are going to battle for the silver.
I'm going to be real with you. I think Bo Nix might come in third, and that's not an indictment on Bo at all. Because to me, and I kind of used this example earlier as it relates to TJ Watt, but it feels like Jaden is winning it because he's a quarterback, which is the most impactful position in the NFL, and he's he's having arguably the greatest rookie QB season of all time. I know Justin Herbert has the record for like most touchdowns, but Jaden Daniels doing it with less than what Herbert had when he stepped into LA, and they're in an NFC championship game. They are winning because of him, not alongside him or in spite of him. But as far as the silver medal goes, this literally could be like where Bo Nix, who in my opinion has done everything that you could ask for in terms of a guy to be in contention for the award. So silver medal seems fair. But Brock Bowers just literally came out of nowhere. I mean, it kind of feels like Secretariat and Sham, right? Like if Secretariat didn't exist, Sham would have won all those things and been the greatest horse racer of all time. And Bo Nix, I think, is just going to get blocked up right there.
Well, it takes me back to when Noah Fant was a rookie. And I remember Zach By talking about how hard it is for a rookie tight end to put up big numbers. I think the only rookie tight end at that point who had 1,000 yards was Mike Ditka.
Yep.
All the way back, in like the 60s, because it's a hard.
Because Kyle Pitts came after that.
Yeah. Because it's a hard position. You have to be able to be in the run game and the pass game. You got to be able to block. Like it's just a tough position as a rookie. Brock Bowers had a historic rookie season as a tight end. He's arguably the best tight end in football.
Yeah.
I mean, as a rookie, he's in that conversation, and he's playing with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell.
Correct.
In a dumpster fire in Las Vegas.
This actually could be the worst quarterback situation he'll face for the beginning of his career. They can only get better.
It'll be interesting to see, because I wanted the Broncos to take Brock Bowers at 12. So I'm not saying he should finish second because of that, because I think Bo Nix, and however they finish second and third, I don't think there's a big argument.
I agree.
But it'll be interesting to see as this ages 5, 6, 7 years from now, those 5 guys that are on that list, are they going to be in the same ranking they're going to be this year? Like, is Jaden Daniels the best of the bunch? Is Brock Bowers 2? Is Bo Nix 3? Malik Neighbors gets a quarterback. Where does he end up? Brian Robinson, how does it turn out?
I'll tell you this. I think it's going to be between those first 3. I think that
I'm confident in the first 2. I'm not. I think Brock Bowers is going to be the best tight end in football for 5 to 10 years. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be that guy we're watching every year.
I think Jaden Daniels is a stud.
I think if the Broncos put some skill position guys around Bo Nix, he's going to be a very effective quarterback. I do. I think if they try to trot out this same type of thing they did this year and don't get the green lights with the schedule that they got this year, I think he has a chance to regress. Because if you look at it, like Jaden Daniels had signature moments. The Hail Mary's a lucky one, but that's a signature moment. He had the late drive. Was it at Philly that he had the late drive where he threw the touchdown in the back of the end zone?
Yeah, I think so.
So that was a signature moment. Bo, everybody wants to talk about, he let him into field goal range and at Arrowhead. It's like nobody remembers John Elway leading him into Rich Karlis territory for a game-winning field goal. Like, what's this?
If they won, it would have been remembered.
They need what was his signature moment? What was Bo's signature moment?
I don't know, James. He threw the miraculous end of game tying touchdown into Marvin Mims against the Bengals. Even the over the top one. The first one was one of the prettiest throws I've seen a Broncos.
You know what would have been the signature moment had they gone for 2 in Cincinnati and gotten it? The touchdown to Marvin Mims to win that game would have been a signature moment. The 93-yard touchdown to Marvin Mims was pretty spectacular. So he had some. He had some.
Yeah, against Cleveland, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were some moments, but, most of their wins were kind of lopsided wins against bad teams. I mean, he played great against the Falcons, but it was 38-6. There's not a signature moment.
How about him catching a touchdown pass?
In Tampa?
On the Philly special.
That was a disastrous call. He bailed his coach out on that one. So it's interesting. And then if you look at the coaches, like Sean Payton was it's a quirky nomination because he had a lot of miscues during the year.
Well, let's look at the nominees again real quick, just so we can have it queued up here. You've got Dan Campbell, the kneecap biter, Kevin O'Connell, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn, and Andy Reid.
I think Payton finishes 5th.
Ooh. Throw him up there one more time, Trey.
Dan Campbell's going to win.
Why would Sean Payton finish? Because you got to remember, it's about what they did this year.
Right. Dan Campbell's team went 15-2. It was a 1 seed. Kevin O'Connell went 14-3 with Sam Darnold. Dan Quinn went 12-5.
Yeah, but the Lions went. They won 13 games or whatever last year.
I know, but
okay, and then they got spanked by a rookie quarterback. Kevin O'Connell fizzled out against the divisional opponent, and
they went 14-3. I mean,
Or would you say, because who do you think is going to win? Because I think there's
Dan Campbell.
I think Dan Quinn might win it.
He might. And Andy Reid's team went 15-2. They were 15-1 on Christmas Day. Sean Payton's going to finish 5th.
I don't know if he'll finish 5th. I definitely don't think he's going to win. But I would argue for the same reason that the winner who I think has a good chance of winning it, in my opinion, which is Dan Quinn, is because you take a look at what he's done. He rebuilt and reestablished the culture within an organization that was just wrought with the stench of Dan Snyder and all of that stuff. He brings in Jaden Daniels, and suddenly that team is the talk of the NFC, and he's doing it with not a lot. Now, it's not to the same degree, although I think certain things you could argue were tougher in this instance than others, but isn't that in essence what Sean Payton has kind of done?
To a lesser extent.
Yeah,
I think Dan Quinn has done a better job.
Yeah, and he's been more successful at it. He's playing in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
But I think they're kind of built from the same mold. I don't think anyone's surprised that the Chiefs were a number 1 seed this year, even though it was the ugliest 15-2 you've ever seen. And the Lions surprised everybody last year. This wasn't a surprise anymore. And the same with Kevin O'Connell. The Vikings were, it was just
14-3 with Sam. Nobody thought they'd do that well with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, but
nobody.
I don't know if everybody said 14-3.
I think in terms of exceeding your over under, I'll bet you Peyton is 2. I'll bet you Kevin O'Connell exceeded it by more. Getting to 14 wins is hard, and he did it with. What was their over under with JJ? It was probably 6.5. And then once he got hurt, it probably didn't change. It probably went down. So. I think Dan Campbell's going to win. I think Kevin O'Connell's.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dan. Who won it last year? Did Dan Campbell win it last year?
I don't know.
I'd have to look that up, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Campbell. I think Dan Quinn makes a strong argument, and I think that Sean Payton's, what he's done here is similar to that, which makes me think I don't know that he'd finish last, even if he doesn't win.
Of those 5 coaches, if you had a magic wand and they could be the coach of the Broncos, how do you rank them? Sean Payton's 5th on my list.
Well, I guess it depends because
I'd take Andy Reid 1. I think Andy Reid might be you can make an argument Andy Reid's the best coach of all time.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not going to make a huge argument against that. I don't. It hasn't translated really to any kind of postseason success in terms of a guy that has reached the mountaintop yet, and they've had some disappointing outs. But the more I get peeks behind the scenes at how Kevin O'Connell operates, I really think that as an offensive guy and connecting with his quarterback and, things of that nature, I would be tempted by that.
I would too.
As much as I love the guy from a culture standpoint, I think that I don't know that I would be jumping at Dan Campbell as much as I love him.
Me either. And here's why. What you said about Kevin O'Connell's spot on. I think the way Kevin O'Connell goes about it, and the way he manages people, I think that has sustainability. I think that's going to work for a decade. I think Dan Campbell's approach has been great. It's been refreshing. I just think it has a short fuse. And I think it might be now. The whole kind of the rah-rah way he is, the fact that they lost the way they did last year in the NFC title game, kind of on him. The way they blew it this year, at some point, that goes from everybody's ready to run through the wall for you to rolling their eyes at you.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Well, and I'll tell you this. It's that Dan Campbell archetype, the almost cartoon caricature presence. I think the kneecap biter, the us against the world, the Globo Gym, we're tougher than you, we're better than you, and we know it. That is tailor-made for Detroit. That Dan Campbell perfectly embodies the lifestyle, the mindset, and the mentality of that community and that fan base. But if Dan Campbell came here and did that, this fan base would run him out of town faster than he could put his house up for sale.
It also works.
It would be bad.
It also works when you're taking over an 0-16 team,
right.
And it's very easy to say us against the world because it truly is.
Yeah.
Now that you're coming off a 15-2 season, 2 disappointing finishes back to back.
Yeah,
that's a tougher sell.
No, I think that we're in for a very potentially rude awakening now that Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn have left. It's and it made sense. It made sense you could see why, because they were just fingertips away. They were freaking Josh Reynolds drops away from a Super Bowl appearance last year, and so you run it back with all the same coordinators and all the same stuff, and then you get punked again.
I could see it unraveling quickly in Detroit. I could.
I hope not.
I hope not too.
Yeah.
I'm not rooting for it, but like I think Kevin O'Connell is going to be a great coach for 10 years. So is Dan Quinn.
All right, so I think we're in agreement. We don't think Sean Payton's going to win. But Sean, I don't know that Sean Payton would be last on my list in terms of coaches I would take over like he is for you. You want to go shopping?
Yeah.
I think that this is going to be one of the more fun, exciting, intriguing off seasons for the Broncos in recent history. Because for the first time in what feels like a decade, we are not going to be pining over quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl and this and that, and who's going to be dropping to who and this and that. And I think the Broncos are going to get to go shopping in a way that they have not been fortunate enough to do in a long time, because
Agreed.
they've got somebody that they believe in as their quarterback. And now it's just time to, you've laid down the hardwood floor. Now let's bring in the furniture.
They get to go luxury shopping.
Yes.
Which is a heck of a lot more fun, right? Like they're not putting in cabinets anymore. They're not putting down tile. They get to go buy the fancy stuff because that's what they need at this point. They need a receiver, a tight end, and a running back.
Okay. Those were the three that I was going to bring up. What should be first on their shopping list?
Running back.
Okay.
If they had, and I wrote about this Tuesday at denversports.com, and I tried to do it with the hypothetical, right? Like Jamar Chase, Brock Bowers, Saquon Barkley. If you could have magically put one of those three guys on the Broncos this year, who would have made the biggest impact?
Saquon Barkley, and
it's not even close.
Yeah.
Right? Like Brock Bowers, okay, they would have been better, but they probably still would have been 10-7. Jamar Chase, they would have been better. Maybe they win one more game. I think you put Saquon Barkley on this team this year, they're putting a fear in the Chiefs. Like they're on the Chiefs' heels all season long.
I think that immediately, like putting Saquon Barkley in there, because the Broncos' offensive line was not abysmal in run blocking or pass protection. Honestly, they were pretty good. And that's another area that I feels like we've been very hit or miss or shoddy as it relates to the Broncos year to year. It was really the running backs that were causing the run game not to be effective.
And the coach not sticking with it.
True.
It was the two.
True. Sharpie.
But that's why I think that needs to be number one.
Yeah. If you were to use the Saquon Barkley example, that level of potential of production in the run game to this Broncos team, they might win 13 games.
Agreed. And that's the extreme. Like they're not going to go get Saquon Barkley. The fact that the Giants let him be available, an all-time boneheaded move. But the hypothetical shows you which need, right? Because if you could get an A+ guy at the three positions of need, that makes the most impact.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's, you either got to look at it and say, hey, the guy we want in the draft is going to be there at 20, or you got to go sign somebody in free agency.
Did you see Mel Kiper's debut mock draft? For those of you that maybe haven't, I'll throw it up on the screen here for you with just a highlight of some selected picks. He has the Tennessee Titans taking quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami. Not a huge surprise there, because we had heard that teams were favoring Cam Ward over Shedeur kind of late in the process. Some of that may change at the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl and things of that nature. And I don't know if some of that has to do with the Barnum and Bailey effect of the Deion Sanders experience that teams just aren't thrilled with. Travis Hunter, the two-way phenom, going second overall to the Cleveland Browns, which is maybe not a great place for a quarterback to go, but it's worked out pretty well as a cornerback for Denzel Ward. It worked out for Amari Cooper for a long time as a wide receiver, and Jerry Jeudy currently. Shedeur goes 3 to the Giants. 14, Indianapolis Colts take tight end Tyler Warren out of Penn State. That's a sexy name.
This year's Brock Bowers, maybe?
Yep. The Broncos land Ashton Genty, the Heisman runner-up, at number 20.
Love it.
Right after that, Emeka Ibuka at Ohio State, one of the higher profile receivers in this draft, and a position of need for the Broncos opposite Courtland Sutton, and eventually maybe replacing Courtland Sutton based on the timing of that. And the Chargers take the other highly mentioned tight end in the first round there, Colston Loveland out of the University of Michigan. I
think you have to. I'd be fine if it went that way, right?
That's what I was just going to ask. If the board plays out that way, given that Tyler Warren is off the board, that Genty is still there along with those other guys, that the Broncos go Genty at 20.
Yeah.
Running back in the first round.
I'm fine with it. The gamble is that's after free agency. So that would mean you didn't address running back in free agency. You better hope he falls to 20, right? And so then you gotta address tight end in free agency. They have to, running back and tight end have to be 1 and 2. You can make the argument at receiver that, hey, look how Marvin Mims finished the season.
Vele will take another step.
Right. Franklin will
hopefully
take a step.
Troy Franklin.
I think it's a little bit dangerous to count on too many Nick Benito type turnarounds or leaps.
Which is what you'd be counting on in the receiver room.
But they got enough candidates that one of them could do it. They don't have anybody in the tight end room that can do it.
No,
they don't have anybody in the running back room who can do it.
If I never have to watch another Nate Atkins catch, I'll be fine.
Those positions have to be addressed in free agency and or the draft. It's interesting to see what they do in free agency because that'll tell you what they're doing.
All
in the
right,
draft.
let's take a spin off of Mel Kiper's mock there. What if the Indianapolis Colts take the other tight end, Colston Loveland out of Michigan, right? And at 20, you've got the option to take Tyler Warren out of Penn State or Ashton Genty at 20. So would that change your mind at all? Do you go with this year's Brock Bowers, even though it maybe isn't as big of a position to need as running back, or do you stick with Genty?
Well, and we're assuming they didn't address either position in free agency.
Just for the sake of argument.
Okay,
yeah.
I would take Warren.
You would?
I think their tight end room is a business.
Wow, you John Elway it. You have your heart set. You know you need this guy, and it's just like, oh, Bradley Chubb was never supposed to be there.
There's two reasons for it. You're right. I did kind of John Elway.
Yeah.
One, I think their tight end room is actually worse than their running back room.
Yeah, because the running back room has 3 below average guys. The tight end room just has no guys.
Right. So I think that's worse. And I do think you can find a running back in other rounds, right? Like we've seen a lot of late round running backs turn into really good players.
Well, I mean, let's not forget some of the best tight ends in the NFL were third, round day 2 or later picks, and Kittle, Andrews, Kelsey.
Yeah, it's just I think back in the day, I think now those guys are going high. That's why there was 3 of them, I think, on the mock that you just showed, because tight end is now kind of a premium position. Finding a guy that can stretch the field, I think, is hard to do. So I would gamble and take the great tight end and hope I can find a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round. I think you have better odds of that.
Real quickly on the way out, because I haven't had a chance to talk about it yet this week. We've just had so much going on. Did you see the Avalanche's quarter century team, the NHL putting out all those different teams? Those different collections, first line, second line, basically, from 2000 to present. And some people like Stoke and others have been griping over the timing of it. Actually sounds like something you would complain about. Really? We're doing this in the middle of the regular season, NHL? That's, talk about little man syndrome. So this was the NHL's quarter century team here. On the first team, you had just a murderer's row of Peter Forsberg, Nathan McKinnon, Joe Sakic. On the defensive side, Adam Foote, Cale Makar, and of course, Patrick Waugh between the pipes. And on your second team, which I think some franchises, you could contend with that on their first line, Milan Hajduk, Gabe Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, Rob Blake, Eric Johnson, and Semyon Varlamov. You want to illustrate the drop-off in goaltender between Patrick Waugh and everyone else? That Semyon Varlamov is on the quarter century team roster for the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. Who else would make it though? Darcy?
He's got a ring. Won a cup.
You could make that argument.
I didn't make that argument, but I did bring it up. And that was going to be my question to you was, one, just right off the bat, give me the Avs quarter century first team over any first team in the NHL.
I'm with you.
I don't think any team's collection of players over 30 years beats that team right there.
I 100% agree. I think that's the best team you could possibly put together. The other part of that, when you had that graphic up that jumped out at me, how do you let Mikko Rantanen walk?
He's on your quarter century team.
He's on your quarter century team. He's in his prime, right?
He's a 100-point scorer potentially for a 3rd straight season.
You gotta re-sign that guy. You have to. You can't get past the trade deadline and not have this resolved, because then there's a chance you lose him for nothing. So you either have to trade him or sign him in the next, I don't know.
Well, there's some rumblings and whispers as it relates to the NHL itself, not specifically like Mikko's camp or the Avalanche, but rumblings about the NHL in general that I think could be good news for those hoping for the re-sign Mikko campaign. But yeah, in terms of for the most part, especially on that first team, 10 out of 10, no notes for me on the. But I wanted to point it to you. Do you think was there anybody that you would have swapped out, even if it's on the second team there, or are there any players that maybe got snubbed in terms of the Avalanche's quarter century team?
No, I mean, I do think EJ kind of made it as a little bit of a longevity
award. Yeah.
I mean, he was he ever a great defenseman here? Like, no, but he was here for a long time and he was really good.
Right. Was his, like what even though if you want to go polar opposites, right? Eric Johnson was here for a long time and they didn't, it took him a long time to accomplish, a championship. Whereas like a guy like Raymond Bourque, right? Top player at the top, at the end of his career, but a top player at his position, right? Like, and I don't know that they win that cup without.
I don't know if they do either, but it's a season and a half.
I'm just saying
the fact that his number's in the rafters every time I go to Ball Arena, I roll my eyes.
I've heard people chirping about John Michael Lyles not being included.
Over who's he going to beat out?
I'm just telling you, I put this out there and I'm just telling you the responses that I was given. I said 10 out of 10, no notes.
Most of the time.
The only one that I would have considered, and it's not necessarily because I think that it's like an egregious snub. I think it's more of just an indictment of where things are at. But the one I already mentioned of Kemper over Semyon Varlamov.
Yeah, but he won a ring and he was so important to them winning a ring that he was gone the next year, right? Like, he just somebody was going to be between the pipes. He just needed to be fine, and he was fine. I don't have a problem with Varley being on there. It's a little bit of a longevity.
The original video tribute, Semyon Varlamov.
Yeah, he was here a long time. That's a big drop off from Patrick Waugh.
Oh my gosh!
But I think they nailed it. I think the first team and the second team is spot on. I think that oftentimes with these, there's always one or two. You're like, what? Who put this together?
Mm-hmm.
Nope. I think this one they nailed it.
Yeah, I was always, like selfishly, I always enjoy like one of my favorite players, that fits into this quarter century. That like I always loved Alex Tanguay, but it's like okay, he's not quite on the level of some of those guys. But like I got to meet him when I was in fourth grade.
Sure,
it's just like whatever. Like I said, that would be. I hope that's like the next exercise that we can do with these quarter century teams.
Put Taves ahead of EJ.
That's another one. Devon Taves.
I think he might be a better defenseman. Like at his peak as an Av, he's better than EJ was at his peak.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good one too. I didn't even think about Taser. Yeah, now I kind of like we alluded to when I said give me the Avs first team quarter century over everybody else's in the league. Can we get some simulations now, like they did in that Rocky movie, where it's like, what would Rocky Balboa do against this heavyweight boxer? Can we get like a simulated, scoring of like which team would win? Who's the ultimate kind of quarter century lineup? Because
I would have put Frankie as the second goalie because he was the ultimate backup goalie.
Wow, Frankie.
Just to make a point,
they chanted his name.
They didn't have another good goaltender, so we're gonna pput the ultimate backup, Frankie.
It was hilarious.
That would have made a good point.
It was hilarious too at during that cup run where they went with the difference between Kemper being in net and Frankie. It was like having two dogs and one is like a Cane Corso and a Great Dane and the other is like a Schnauzer.
Yeah.
Like it was just like Kemper looks like this grizzly bear between the pipes. He's huge. He spans the whole thing. And then Frankie's just like this little, zipping around.
They probably don't win it without Frankie because I remember Kemper
they don't win it without.
I
equate them to be, although the position, it doesn't correlate exactly. They, to me, are Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler.
Yeah.
You needed, when Kemper got hit in the eye and he had to put on the patch and he had to miss those games, you needed somebody to step in and stem that tide. And Frankie did. And he had, I think it was the Edmonton series, right?
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, he won one of his wins. He won 8-6.
Yeah. I was at that game.
Wasn't a great performance, but hey, you got the win. Yeah. So he's certainly got some help, but that's how it's supposed to work, right? Oh, we got a backup goaltender in there.
That was the most memorable game. The two games that I remember most from that, because me and Zach Bai and others during that cup run, we made an effort to not as a media member, as a fan, go to one game in every series as long as the Avs
an investment
advance. It was the most memorable game by far for me was going to game 1 of the Stanley Cup final when they won it in overtime 2-1.
Yeah.
And just like, I had never experienced playoff hockey, let alone Stanley Cup final hockey. So you had overtime Stanley Cup final hockey. And I know it was only game 1, but when they scored that goal to win 2-1, I've never felt Ball Arena shake like that. I mean, it was to the point where, like, because we were up high. We were like, up in the rafters, basically, where they make the media sit, ironically.
Yeah.
And it was like you had to brace yourself, like you're gonna fall because people, and like me and Zach and others were just like freaking out. But the second, again, maybe a Patrick Varley second, was that 8-6 game, because we actually sat close for that one. We were like 100 level, and I was like, we were behind one of the nets, and I remember thinking, I'm like, of course, this is the game where there's 15 goals scored, and it's just like, it's like a football game. It was like the horns are going off every 4 minutes. And hopefully we can return to some of those times, because man, what a blast that was.
Yeah, no doubt. That game, it reminds me, like, the only other time I've been at a sporting event where you could feel sound, right? Instead of just hear it, you could feel it, was Tebow to Demarius. Same type of thing.
I wish I could have been there.
Like, you could just, like, you literally could feel the crowd, like the sound of it. It was amazing.
I wish I could have been there for that. I was at a Big Ten. I went to a Big Ten championship game when Michigan State and Iowa played to go to the college football playoff, and Michigan State won to go get the honor of being shellacked by Derrick Henry in Alabama by 40 points.
Yeah.
But when they won that game on like a fourth quarter game winning drive, it felt like Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where the Colts play.
Yeah.
Because of the way that stadium is structured, it's kind of like indented into the ground a little bit, and you're kind of like, stadium seatinged up, and it literally did feel like the floor beneath you was kind of waving, and it was like, oh my gosh. And cool. I just I loved it, man. And as far as the Avs go, I think that we're closer than maybe we were to getting back to that point, with some of the reassurances we've gotten at the goaltender position, but still going to need guys like Val Nichushkin back in the lineup, and you're still going to need guys like Nathan and Kale and Arturi Lehkonen and the lot to carry their weight, which is crazy that now the conversations we're having about the Avs losing, as they've made a habit of in the last 10, 12 games or so, it's not because of the goaltender, which became the easy scapegoat.
Yeah. It's just a team that, man, they can't seem to get it all together at the same time. Partially it's injuries, or then when when their offense was rolling, the goaltending would fall apart. Now the goaltending's pretty good. It's like, some of the stars, it's just like they can't get all on the same page at the same time. Hopefully it's, after the All-Star break, it turns into peak at the right time. That's the hope. That's me being optimistic to end the show.
Well, look at that. Yeah. What a better note to end it on than a James Merilatt nugget of optimism. Mm-hmm. James, as always, I appreciate you chatting with me every Thursday. And I can't wait to get into it with the rest of you all tomorrow. We'll see you then.